Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and today I have with me Amy Burroughs, CEO of Terns Pharmaceuticals, for a discussion on chronic myeloid leukemia and the wider oncological landscape today. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks so much for having me.
So Terns Pharmaceuticals recently presented new preclinical data on its Terns 701 program in chronic myeloid leukemia, or CML for short, at the 30th European Hematology Association, or EHA, Congress. CML is a unique disorder in the rare disease sector because there are multiple approved therapies for patients. There is a need for multiple agents driven by lifelong treatment and frequent switching of therapies, and approximately 40% of patients switch therapy by 5 years due to intolerance or resistance. CML is a well-established indication, yet an unmet need still exists, and there is a sense of urgency as in the US alone, the prevalence of CML is expected to triple by 2040. But before we dive into this central topic, Amy, perhaps you could share with listeners a little bit about yourself and the path that led you to doing what you do today at Terns Pharma. Indeed, I believe you actually have several friends who are living with CML.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nicole. And again, thanks for having me. Yeah, CML has impacted my life in a lot of ways. Health has impacted my life in many ways, like it has for many of us. And you asked how I got into Terns. It's really about my journey to work in an area that improves health. I was actually a computer science major and started my career on the technical side and found that I really wanted to do something that I cared about. I had some minor health issues in my 20s and had some mentors in my life who were all about doing good and doing well. And so I've really spent my career working. I started in healthcare services and technology and moved over to an amazing company, Genentech, about 25 years ago, and I really love the development and creation of therapies that change people's lives. And so I've worked in many companies that have had that aspiration, and we share that aspiration at Terns to really create novel medicines that make a difference in people's lives for diseases such as CML. And you asked about how CML has impacted my life. I actually had one of my closest family members in the 90s passed away from CML, and that was at a time when we didn't have the therapies that we have today. It was a fatal disease. And it's really, Nicole, CML, a lot of people don't know, but it's really a great case study in the example of precision oncology and what a difference that these therapies can make in people's lives. But as often happens in drug development, the first generation is not necessarily the best. It has converted CML into a chronic disease and helped with making CML a disease where people live about the same time, and that's articulating this well, as age-matched controls. So it's not about an overall survival. It's about quality of life, and it's about not being on therapy for life. Only about 10% of CML patients can ultimately get off therapy, and so 90% are on therapy. And so we think there's a way to create stronger, more durable responses and potentially get more patients off of drug, reduce side effects, and make it so that it does not disrupt their life the way it does for many CML patients and some of my friends today.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for sharing your personal reasons for doing what you do. So we're going to focus a little bit more on what you've just been saying there with trying to get patients off drugs, and we'll come to that in a second. So just to sort of reiterate perhaps or make clear for listeners today in this episode, coming back to Terns Pharmaceuticals' work in the CML field then, tyrosine kinase inhibitors, or TKIs, are the current standard of care in CML, and most patients will be treated with TKIs for life. However, chronic use, as Amy has been describing, of first-generation and second-generation active site TKIs are associated with multiple adverse events due to off-target effects. So it is that allosteric TKIs represent the next generation of CML therapies. So Amy, are you able to tell us more here? And indeed, how was the data mentioned at the beginning of this episode received at EHA?
Yes, thank you, Nicole. You've done your homework. So allosteric inhibitors are more selective than the first and second generation drugs, which are called active site inhibitors. Allosteric means it binds to a different pocket, the myristate pocket, and does not hit the same off-target kinases that tend to cause the adverse events that active site inhibitors do. And we've seen that with an approved allosteric that's currently on the market. What we showed at EHA and what we are demonstrating is a better allosteric, one that has better potency, better coverage of mutations. And beyond what we presented at EHA, we also presented some clinical data last December to show some of the effects that we have on asciminib resistant patients, those who have failed the first allosteric, asciminib. And what we really aspire to do is to get a better response rate, to have fewer patients switching, fewer side effects, and also a drug that is more convenient to take. So the currently approved allosteric has a fasting requirement. And so for something that you have to take every day, you have to fast. It's a 3-hour fasting window. And ours can be taken without regard to food. And so all these things really add up. We've spent a lot of time with physicians, with patients, and even some of my friends. Everybody's a little bit different, right? For some people, a food requirement's not a big issue. For some people, it is. Some people have comorbidities, whether it be cardiac issues, hypertension, other issues that make it difficult to take some of these other drugs. So we're really aiming to develop a more effective, more tolerable, and more convenient therapy. And ultimately, really the dream and the holy grail, and it will take a long time to show this, would be to get more patients off therapy and cured of their CML.
Absolutely. And as you say, that quality of life consideration is all important. So if we stay with the patient perspective, what does Terns Pharmaceuticals' current work in CML provide now and in terms of potential benefit?
We're in a phase 1 dose expansion trial. So for patients right now, it's the opportunity to enroll in our trial. Those who enroll in our trial are generally refractory to other therapies and in need of a better option. We showed data, as I said, in December about some pretty remarkable effects in a small number of patients. And towards in the fourth quarter of this year, we will be presenting a more robust data set from the patients who've enrolled in the trial to show really how this therapy can be different and better than the TKIs that are on the market today.
Thank you, Amy. So let's really focus on that holy grail forward-looking focus. Your journey, as you say, has been one of bringing meaning to possibilities, certainly within the oncological space. So as you said, CML particularly is a brilliant case study in precision oncology, and you've been explaining for us today why that is so, and certainly just recently with the comorbidity facts you shared with us. So focusing on that holy grail, need, desire, hope, what are indeed your hopes for the CML field at large, not just Terns Pharmaceuticals work, in the next 5 to 10 years, both in terms of the treatment options we've been discussing today and those unmet patient needs being addressed meaningfully?
I mean, really, the dream would be for a newly diagnosed patient with CML to go on a therapy that quickly drove a deep molecular response, really taking the disease down to an almost undetectable level. And currently, the standard is after about 2 to 3 years, a patient can then try to go off therapy and see if the disease stays in remission. And it would be a dream to have today that works for about 10% of patients are able to get those kind of deep responses and to be able to come off therapy. It would really be a dream to have patients either stay on their frontline therapy, never become refractory, be able to stay on a drug that's easy to take and does not cause side effects the rest of their lives, or to even better, to be able to come off of drug, not to have, arterial occlusive events, pleural effusion, hypertension, things that can be caused particularly by the active site tyrosine kinase inhibitors.
Exactly. Off of therapy for more than that 10%, even if it will never quite get to 100%. Thank you, Amy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Nicole.
And that concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments at pharmaphorum.com. pharmaphorum.com/podcasts. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Podbean, and pretty much wherever else you download your other podcasts from. Just search for pharmaphorum and follow and hit subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us on Blue Sky and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.